Hello everybody and welcome to another Oscar prediction update video. But first I just want to make sure you're caught up on everything. My last update video was in June, and I said I wasn't going to do one in July because I was going to be filming this feature-length fan project, Wolves, a fan-made Life is Strange 2 story. And you may notice there was no video in July, but I was not shooting the movie. The movie had to be canceled, not canceled, put on hiatus fairly last minute because of a lack of funding. That's the short version. And I don't want to get into the long version right now, but just you may wonder, well, if I wasn't filming the movie, why didn't I do an Oscar prediction video? Because I was depressed, okay? Because I was in a state of depression because I've been working for this project for so long, and then it fell apart, and I was not in a good mental place, and I was kind of just doing nothing for a while. And so I just wanted to make sure you understand that's what the situation was, and I'm trying to do everything I can to feel better. I'm in a place now, at least, where I can make another Oscar prediction video, but it's been a while, and I'm going to stick to the schedule of trying to do one of these a month while also working on From Pixels to Pictures, just so that it gives me something to work on. In case you're wondering, I have played Resident Evil the game, seen Resident Evil the movie, and I'm working on the script to that video, and it shouldn't take that long before that video is out. So with that all out of the way, this is the August Oscar prediction video. So let's. So one thing that's different this month is I have added predictions for the categories of Best Documentary and Best Foreign Language Film. Sorry, Best International Feature. That's what it's called now. So I'm just gonna. Sorry, this is me scrolling through the thing to try and get it to where it is. Best Documentary Feature. Okay, so these are all new, as you can see. And the 5 films I'm predicting to get nominated are Flea, Rita Moreno, Just a Girl Who Decided to Go With It, The Sparks Brothers, Street Gang, How We Got to Sesame Street, and Summer of Soul. And I want to emphasize, I really don't know much about these documentaries. This is really kind of a shot in the dark. Summer of Soul is getting really great reviews, and so that's what I'm focusing on as the frontrunner. And The Sparks Brothers is Edgar Wright, so I think it's going to contend. Flea is really interesting because it is an animated foreign language documentary that, spoiler alert, I have getting nominated in all 3 categories because people are saying that it's good enough to do that, and I think it could pull off this really cool trifecta. I don't think it's going to win any of them. I think votes are going to get split a lot, and there's not going to be a lot of consensus. For now, Summer of Soul seems to be the frontrunner, although the Oscars are known for snubbing the frontrunners, so it's really hard to tell what's going to win at this stage. But I think there's definitely a lot of compelling documentaries this year, and we'll see. Number 10 in the same breath is about COVID, and I do wonder, is it too soon to award a documentary about COVID, or will it be just the right time? We shall see. So, moving on to Best International Feature, I have alphabetically Flea, The Hand of God, A Hero, Parallel Mothers, and The Worst Person in the World. So Worst Person in the World was a big hit at, not Sundance, Telluride, I think. It was a big hit at one of the, Cannes. It was a big hit at Cannes, sorry. Parallel Mothers is the Pedro Almodovar film with Penelope Cruz, so that's going to get a lot of attention. The Hand of God, I don't really know who that's from, but I know it's getting really good ratings. A Hero is Asghar Farhadi, who did A Separation, and Flea is, as I said before, animated foreign language documentary. I think this category might be the most difficult one for it to get in, but we'll see. I will point out, my number 6 is Titane. I think I'm pronouncing that right, Titane. And it won the grand prize at Cannes. So why do I have it at number 6? Because we don't know if France is going to select it, because France has had a history of not always selecting the movie that they should. We saw it a couple years back with Portrait of a Lady on Fire. And so it's hard to really know. So logic would dictate they're not going to pick Titan, but if they do, it's definitely going to contend. But that's why I have it just outside of getting nominated. And really, the rest are just I don't know that many international features, so I just put these together. But it's it's hard to really know. Also, the woman who stars in The Worst Person in the World is not Dakota Johnson, despite a startling resemblance. So just wanted to clarify that. Anyway, moving on to Best Animated Feature Film. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about here because I have moved The Mitchells versus the Machines into the number one spot because having now seen the film, I believe there's a very good chance that it could win. And I'm not 100% confident on that, but the movie has a lot of support. A lot of people are very passionate about it. And it was early in the year, but it's still people are still talking about it. And we saw the last couple of years with Toy Story 4 and Soul winning, there does seem to be a little bit of Pixar fatigue. Of like, you know, there's other great animated movies that come out every year, and I think Luca I have at number 3, and I think that's a very good movie, and it certainly does have its fans, but there's also a lot of people saying it's middle tier Pixar, and also a lot of people. For me, whether or not you think Luca is middle tier Pixar or if you think it's a really good Pixar film is entirely based on whether or not you choose to read into the subtext of the movie. But that's neither here nor there. I have Encanto at number 2, and that movie, well, we really don't know. It looks interesting from the trailer, but we shall see. Maybe it'll be really good and be a real contender, but we've had a lot of good animated movies this year, and I do think Mitchell's just has so much passion behind it that it can really contend. And people, if it's a tight race, it will contend. Of course, they have Flea at number 4. I mentioned that movie earlier, and Raya and the Last Dragon. This is a really interesting case because it's crazy that people are talking about can Raya miss because it's Disney and it's really good. And normally, when a film is Disney and really good, it doesn't miss. But the fact that it came out so early in the year, like it was like the very first thing that came out, and it was out before the previous Oscar nominations were even announced, a lot of people have already forgotten about this film. A lot of people have already moved past it, which is a shame because it's good. But like when the time comes to vote for the Oscar nominations at the end of the year, how many people are going to be like, Raya and the Last Dragon? I thought that was last year. Like, it's so long ago, it might as well be last year. Hopefully, Disney's going to campaign, but I think how hard they campaign for Raya is going to depend on how good Encanto is. If Encanto gets really, really good reviews, then they're going to push all of their chips behind Encanto, and they can easily forget about Raya. But it's tough. I still think Raya can get on, but it's going to be difficult. And then Vivo, I haven't seen yet, but I've heard very good things about. I moved Paw Patrol the movie into the number 8 position because of that Rotten Tomatoes score. And it was 100% for a really long time, and then it just got its first negative review. But critics are like, hey, this is better than it has any right to be. It's a totally harmless, fine, enjoyable kids movie, and sometimes that can get votes. It would be pretty crazy if it did get nominated because the Academy doesn't usually like to nominate animated movies based on a pre-existing property. A Lego Movie got snubbed, of course. There's a couple other examples. Adventures of Tintin. Something else that's blanking me. I thought for the longest time Spider-Verse would not make it until I saw it and it was really, really hyped up. But that's neither here nor there. It would be pretty crazy if that got nominated. Also, Where is Anne Frank? I have in between Vivo and Paw Patrol, but I have heard that like that movie is more educational than anything else, so it doesn't really sound like the sort of thing that they go for. Either way, this is proving to be a really strong year for animation, so it's going to be a really interesting year for this category. And even though I think Luca's a really good movie, I am kind of hoping they don't default to Pixar and that they do something a little more interesting. So, with that out of the way, we're going to move on now to Best Sound. Okay, so I have Dune at number one, based on early screenings. I've moved Dune up a little bit overall in my predictions, because people are saying this movie is going to be really, really big, and it's Denis Villeneuve. I was kind of skeptical on it for a while, but the response I've heard from people that have seen like the first 10 minutes are like, dude, don't sleep on this movie. It's going to be big. Eternals at two. Don't Look Up is number three. I'm going to talk about that movie a bit more, but that's, I think, one of the bigger Oscar contenders of the year. Nightmare Alley have moved up a little bit after being skeptical on it for a while. And then In the Heights. So let's talk about In the Heights. This movie, last Oscar prediction video I did, I'm like, In the Heights is super, super high. Everyone loves it. It's this big movie from early in the year that everyone's going to remember. It's going to get on, no question. And then it bombed at the box office. And it feels like a lot of people still don't understand why In the Heights bombed at the box office. But it, for whatever reason, it didn't do nearly as well as people thought it would. But people still love the movie. So a lot of people are writing off its Oscar chances. But I'm not quite ready to do that yet. I think that because it's such a beloved movie from early in the year, and it is a movie that people will remember, I think they're going to mount a campaign behind it and word of mouth. Because it didn't do well at the box office, that makes it an underdog contender, which can really help its chances. So I still think In the Heights can be an awards contender, and I have it on the cusp of getting nominated, but it's not the huge overperformer that I had it last time. I think it's on the edge, and it can be a big thing, but we have to actively push to make it a big thing. Okay, Quiet Place just misses. House of Gucci, I think, can do well. Oh, 9 Days. This is one of the few places where I still mention 9 Days, because everyone who sees it likes it, but the studio is not like doing a great job of getting eyeballs on it, so we shall see just how well that does. Okay, so I think that's it for Best Sound. Let's move on to Best Song. So I've moved Encanto to the top spot just because I don't know what else to put in there, and it's Lin-Manuel Miranda. But Lin-Manuel Miranda has a couple contenders in it. You'll see a Tick Tick Boom and Vivo in the lower tier. And those can contend. I feel some people are really, really having high expectations for a Tick Tick Boom. I'm not entirely sure why. They're like, oh, Lin-Manuel Miranda is really hot right now. Yes, but you're saying that at the same time you're saying In the Heights is not going to do well, despite the fact that everyone's seen it and likes it. Also, he's not an approved director. He's never directed before. And Vanessa Hudgens is attached to that movie, and last I heard she was kind of being canceled because of the whole video she had when the pandemic started about, like, people are going to die, but it's inevitable. So it feels kind of weird that people are saying Tick Tick Boom is going to be a big thing, especially after it missed New York Film Festival. It's not going to be premiering at New York, which people thought for sure was going to happen. So I don't know. It seems like I just don't expect Tick Tick Boom to be a big thing. Back to the movies I do expect to be nominated. No Time to Die is still hanging in there. We shall see. The Lady Gaga has a song for Top Gun Maverick, and I moved West Side Story in there because I'm like, fine, it's gotta be in there. It's a musical. And even though people love In the Heights, no one is really humming Home All Summer that much. They're like, oh, there's an end credit song too. And 2 animated stuff for use in Trying and Spirit Untamed, which I think that's still a good song, Fearless. But whatever, people aren't watching that movie. And I've moved past Dear Evan Hansen because I want to get to Dear Evan Hansen last. This movie, I think, is has the potential to be in a big awards contender. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm biased, because I do really like the stage version, and I am really looking forward to this movie. But I'm gonna have high hopes for this, that it's gonna overperform. And I think one category where it can definitely get nominated is original song, because we know there's gonna be an original song. We still don't know what it's called yet, but I think there's definitely room for Dear Evan Hansen to impress, as we'll see in other categories. Moving on now to Best Original Score. So I have Dune in the number one position, and the reason for that is people who have heard the score in the trailer and in the first 10 minutes are like, guys, don't sleep on this score. Hans Zimmer has said he's been like waiting to do this movie for 10 years, so there's a lot of people saying this score is really something special. So I have it in number one position. Don't Look Up is the same Nicholas Britell, I think, who did Moonlight, and what was the other one? If Beale Street Could Talk. So great composer, and I think Don't Look Up is going to be a big awards contender. So and Nightmare Alley is Alexandre Desplat, I believe. It seems to come down to just who's the biggest composers. I still have Eternals getting on though, which is I don't think is as big a composer, but we'll see. Power of the Dog is Johnny Greenwood. Tragedy Macbeth is Carter Burwell. I guess I just have it missing just because they can't all be big composers. I will say real quick, Power of the Dog, I am now saying is going to be an awards contender. I was hesitant on it for a while. The reason people think it's going to be a really big deal is because it's playing at all the major festivals, and it's one of the few titles that is playing at all the major festivals, and that shows that they have a lot of confidence in it. And we could be wrong. I'm not fully committing to Power of the Dog as like a Best Picture winner, which some people are, because no one's seen it yet, and Jane Campion has not made a movie since 2009's Bright Star. So but we'll see. We'll see. For now, I'm going to try and have faith in Power of the Dog. So Luca is in number 7 because that score is amazing. I love that score so much, and it would be great if it could get on. And sometimes animated films and Pixar do get on. Pixar won last year, so maybe they can contend for Luca. But we don't really know yet just how well that's going to do. French Dispatch, also Alexandre Desplat, but I think he's going to put most of his chips behind Nightmare Alley. From what I've heard about French Dispatch, it's a film that's like going to do well below the line because it has amazing production design and costume design, but in terms of story and narrative, like it's not going to do a whole lot above the line. It's one of those movies that's just a feast to look at, but there's like not... It's all style, very little substance. That's what I've heard, at least. So, Green Knight's also been doing very well, and I did mention 9 Days as well. Not a whole lot to say. We haven't heard a lot of these scores, and we still have room to be surprised. But for now, this seems like a good list, although I think that it's possible we're going to see a film with a lesser-known composer surprise in this category. And also, Thomas Newman did have a movie called Operation Mincemeat that now I believe has been pushed to next year, so that's why that's not mentioned here. Best Visual Effects. So Dune I have in number 1, Eternals in number 2. I've cooled a little bit on Eternals. I think it can still be a Best Picture contender, but not. I don't think it's going to be as big a deal as I once thought it was. I'm having it to perform like roughly on the same level as Black Panther, which did miss out on major nominations that year, including a director and screenplay and editing. So I don't think it's going to be a huge success, but we'll see. I have Okay, after Dune and Eternals, I really don't know what else to put here. And I have Shang-Chi, but that movie's coming out very soon, and like there's not as much hype as you would usually see behind a Marvel release. I think we all got so much Marvel content with the TV, and now with the TV shows, and now Black Widow, we're kind of like, oh god, we're Marveled out. There's so much Marvel, and this is a Marvel property with with characters that are not pre-established. So we'll see what the effects look like. But I have it at number 3 for now, just because I'm not really sure what else to put there. Uh, Suicide Squad people really like, and I think could contend, and Matrix 4 I think could contend. 9 Days I have as the more artsy, subtle effects that they sometimes like to award, but we don't. I think that could get on. If anything from this movie could get on, it's that, but they'd have to push it. Reminiscence, for some reason, I looked at that trailer again and I was like, this feels like the kind of movie that shows up shockingly in visual effects, despite the fact that no one really likes it that much. But I don't know, it just feels like there is some nice effects work here, so don't be shocked if this makes the bake-off list. I think it could contend. And then Free Guy is the one that just came out and everyone's talking about it. And they certainly do some interesting things with CGI and trying to recreate the look and feel of a video game. But I don't know if it's going to have the legs, if people are going to really remember it for the rest of the year. Also, it's primarily a comedy, and you don't see movies like that nominated here that often. Last year we did get Love and Monsters, but last year was a very different scenario because there weren't as many big blockbusters as there are this year. Speaking of which, Spider-Man No Way Home. We know that it's going to be Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield interacting with Tom Holland and a whole bunch of cool stuff like that, but we don't know what the effects are going to look like. And Godzilla vs. Kong, we don't know. We don't know. I am continually reminded by the fact that no video game movie's ever been nominated for visual effects. And I don't mean like Tron or Wreck-It Ralph or Ready Player One. I mean like actual video game adaptation. And I did think about having Mortal Kombat in here. I think I had in one of the previous updates, but it's gone now. And I'm like, Welcome to Raccoon City, the Resident Evil reboot is coming out. But yeah, as I work my way through the From Pixels to Pictures series, I'm going to talk about the fact that no video game movie has ever been nominated, and like maybe at some point one could change that, but if it ever did happen, it would have to be in visual effects, because they do nominate big effects movies that aren't always the best critically received. And also, one last thing, Clifford the Big Red Dog has been pushed to next year, we believe, because of the pandemic. There's no official release date. If it was coming out this year, I think I'd have it in number 10, just because sometimes they nominate movies with CGI animals. It's like One and Only Ivan got on last year, so it's not impossible. But I don't think it's gonna be whatever. I'm losing my train of thought now. Let's move on to best makeup and hairstyling. Okay, so one is obviously House of Gucci. If you've seen the trailer, you're like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing with the character transformations and how different Al Pacino and Jared Leto look. So yeah, this is definitely getting nominated. Eyes of Tammy Faye, also a big transformation thing for Jessica Chastain. So those two, I think, are going to contend. And Dune is going to contend because it's sci-fi and it's one of the big Best Picture contenders, so I have it in. Last Night in Soho. This, I believe, is the one nomination I have Last Night in Soho getting, because they do a lot with I don't know, they do a lot with making Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie look similar, but also have these striking differences, and also period makeup that has to be recreated. So I think Last Night in Soho could contend. I think this could be its only nomination. And Cruella is there because I needed a fifth slot, and honestly, in this category, there's usually one movie that's more hairstyling than makeup, and I think that could be Cruella. But I take that with a grain of salt. Being the Ricardos, it is Nicole Kidman turning into Lucille Ball, but then a lot of people who have seen the set photos say she doesn't look very much like Lucille Ball. The Suicide Squad, just because it's Harley Quinn, but and I guess there are some other characters that are on makeup. Eternals, we still don't know the extent of the effect. French Dispatch, maybe. old has been moved down, because I've heard from people who have seen the movie that the makeup is a lot more subtle than you would think. It's like, I haven't seen the movie, but you'd think with this premise, like, there's gonna be like some very interesting, varied aging makeup slash possible decomposing makeup. Uh, and from what I've heard, they don't do that much with it. I still am leaving it in because I've heard some people say, ooh, it's subtle, but it could be a crazy contender. They do crazy things in this category. So I don't really know, but either way, I don't. It's hard to really know make heads or tails this category. I'm fine with the top five I have, and let's move on to best costume design. Okay, so Cruella is still in the lead, while House of Gucci is right behind it. Um, both movies about the fashion industry. House of Gucci, admittedly, has a bit of a leg up because it's going to be a Best Picture contender. Um, although House of Gucci is really going to have to try hard to match Cruella in terms of flashiness. Uh, this is a category where best costume design often means most costume design, and Cruella has that in the bag just because of that one scene with the dress made out of garbage. So it's going to be an interesting race between those two movies for best costume design. Um, Nightmare Alley at 3, French Dispatch at 4, and Dune at 5, those all make sense. I think there's all valid reasons why those are going to be big contenders, although Power of the Dog, if it ends up being a big contender, could sneak in, because what we've seen of those costumes looks impressive as well. Eternals, superhero suits, Last Night in Soho, also about fashion, and then West Side Story and Tragedy of Macbeth, these all seem pretty self-explanatory to me. You could probably make an interesting category out of any one of these. Oh, I will say, this was the one category where previously I had mentioned Canterbury Glass, and now we know that that's not coming out this year. So that's gone. Sorry, not sorry for David O. Russell. But there's not really much more to say at this one. It's that it's gonna be a battle between Cruella and Gucci, and the other three spots. Who knows? I'm confident with the choices I have. If I'm going too fast, as always, you can just pause. But that's best costume design, and let's move on to best production design. So this category, I have French Dispatch at number 1 because those who have seen the movie are like, it's gonna win production design. It's funny how this and Cruella have sort of become the top contenders for production design and costume design because of the most factor, as I said earlier, even though people have said that the movies aren't really the best outside of the craft. But Dune, I think, is a solid choice for number 2, and Nightmare Alley, we're going to hope at this point it's going to be a big contender, but we still don't really know. And Power of the Dog, from what we've seen of those sets, yeah, it does look like the sort of thing the Oscars reward. And I do have Tragedy of Macbeth in at the last spot, but again, it's going to be tricky. Eternals, I am now predicting to miss. And The Heights, I've moved out because that movie's not done well. Not much to say about the rest of them. I think with a lot of these, we've seen a lot of the sets. We know what it looks like, and it's a lot of it. The work is speaking for itself. We still don't really know, but French Dispatch, I think, seems like a good choice for the win, even if it's not contending in other categories where we think it might. I apologize if it feels like I'm rushing. Let's move on to Best Cinematography. So this is where it gets interesting. I have moved Tragedy of Macbeth into number 1 because I think it's certainly most likely to be nominated. I'm not positive it's going to win, but it is in black and white. And last year, we all thought Nomadland had this category in the bag, but Meg came up and won because it was in black and white, and the Academy just can't resist black and white. So I think that's going to contend. I think Dune is also going to contend from what we've seen from the trailers, and Eternals, as we talked about earlier, It looks pretty impressive for what it is. Uh, Nightmare Alley. Okay, so this is one of the few categories where I'm still saying In the Heights is going to get in, because the cinematography in that movie is really impressive, and if the movie is well remembered, which I think it might be, then this is going to contend. Power of the Dog's just missing, because we still don't know how that's going to do. Everything else, it's interesting because we don't. Saki Bottom is definitely going to be a big Best Picture contender, we think, but how the cinematography looks and how that's received, we still have yet to see that. So, what and Green Knight I've heard very good things about too, and Last Night in Soho looks good from the trailer, but again, what we really don't know until we know, until precursors start. But I'm confident in my guess for cinematography, and I'm going to move on now to editing. I have House of Gucci and Don't Look Up in the top two contenders. And this is as good a time as any to talk about Don't Look Up. During the Olympics, we saw a TV spot of Don't Look Up, and from what we're seeing from that 30-second spot, I'm like, oh, this is definitely going to be a big contender, because not just because Adam McKay has gotten in a bunch of times before, but because the subject matter is very, very timely, to the point where it might be a bit too timely. The thing I'm worried about is, oh, how much of the movie is going to be just, isn't it frustrating when people don't listen to science? Because I've had to deal with that a lot over the past year and a half, and I don't want a whole movie about it. But there is a very talented cast here, and I'm hoping they can bring out some good elements to it, and make people realize, maybe it might serve as something of a wake-up call for people of like, oh yeah, maybe I can take the message of this movie and apply it to other things. Listen to science, for God's sakes. By the way, for everybody who's watching this video, or please get vaccinated. I can't believe I need to say this, but it's a free vaccine against a deadly virus. Like, no one should have to tell you to do this. Okay, so that's out there. Saki Bottom, I think, is definitely going to get nominated because it's a big Best Picture contender. Dune seems like a classic case of, sci-fi, there's going to be action, but it's also going to be a long story that's not going to feel as long as it is, hopefully. And In the Heights, because people have said if it gets nominated for anything, it's going to get nominated for editing. So that's there. Eternals, Power of the Dog. It's a tight category, but I do think the top 5 is a solid top 5 to bet on. But all of these could contend. Last Night in Soho could even contend because Edgar Wright got on for Baby Driver without a Best Picture nomination. And Dear Evan Hansen has the 10th spot because, as I've said earlier, I think this movie has the potential to be a big awards contender. And we'll see. I think it can really do well in this category. And I'm again, if it's a musical, they do like musicals and editing. I'm curious how the song Sincerely Me is going to be done. If the movie's well received, I just have it in the back. So now the time has come to talk about the screenplay categories. Okay, so for adapted screenplay, I have House of Gucci in at number 1, and Coda, which I just saw last night with my family, is in number 2. I think it's a great film. I think it's a film that's gonna that a lot of people are really gonna relate to, and I think it's gonna do very well. Now Dune is number 3, which I think a lot has been made about how it's such a difficult movie to adapt from that book, and so we could really see it come in there. Although I will say right now, I'm hearing more and more that Dune is actually only going to adapt the first part of the book, and that there's another part coming, which could be an issue if the story feels in any way incomplete. Obviously, part 1 and part 2 can both be big deals, but I really hope that the ending doesn't leave you on too much of a cliffhanger and that there's enough in this movie that is worth rewarding. Anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. Power of the Dog is expected to be a big contender, so I put it in here. And then Nightmare Alley, because it makes sense. In the Heights and Dear Evan Hansen both miss because they're both musicals, and the Academy has not been known to be very kind to musicals, particularly in the adapted screenplay category, because it's adapting the stage play and like how much of singing counts as writing. So there's the whole issue with that. The rest of the category, I'm not sure what to say. Some people are predicting Tragedy of Macbeth, but again, it's Shakespeare. How much of it is really being adapted? Are you? Every Shakespeare movie sticks very true to the text and doesn't change it, so it's weird to think that that would be nominated. And Eternals, I mean, Black Panther wasn't nominated, so I'm not gonna predict Eternals to be nominated either. That's basically it. So let's move on now to Best Original Screenplay, which seems to be the more competitive category in my mindset. So we got Soggy Bottom, which is Paul Thomas Anderson. We got Don't Look Up, which, as I said earlier, is Adam McKay, and it's going to be a big contender. Mass, I think, is going to be big. Coming out of Sundance, like, people are saying very, very good things about that. And I debated French Dispatch, but ultimately I'm like, it's Wes Anderson, and it's gonna, if it's a package, it's one of those movies that's telling multiple different stories, and an anthology film is what it is, much in the same vein as the Coen Brothers' Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and that got nominated for screenplay. So it stands to reason that Wes Anderson could get nominated for a screenplay for French Dispatch, though it's not a sure thing. And Being the Ricardos is Aaron Sorkin, and I'm like, okay, that's gonna make it in. I did, for the longest time, I thought that Coda was an original screenplay, and found out recently that it's adapted, so that's why the change has happened. I think Last Night in Soho could get on, we'll see, and then Blue Bayou, maybe. We don't know, and we still, everything else is like maybe up in the air, not sure. There's still a lot of things that we have to take into consideration to figure this out, but yeah, I'm not 100% sold on Being the Ricardos, but it is Aaron Sorkin, so we'll maybe it can be its only nomination. We'll see. So, and now the time has come to talk about the acting categories, which I know is what you've all been waiting for. So, in the category of Best Supporting Actress, first of all, a lot of blondes here, which is interesting. So we got Ann Dowd for Mass, still, I think, in the frontrunner position based on everything I've heard. Marlee Matlin in Coda, I have at number 2 because she's going to campaign the hardest, although having seen the film, she is not the performance that stands out the most from that film, but it could be like with Sacha Baron Cohen in Trial of the Chicago 7 last year, where you don't need to give the best performance, you just need to campaign the most. And Marlee Matlin is going to be everywhere representing this movie. Meryl Streep in Don't Look Up. This is really interesting because we did see her in the trailer and she looks good, but we have no way of knowing if this is a cameo performance or if there's enough screen time to support a nomination. And I think that there will be. She's billed last in the trailer. She's given the "and" credit, and Meryl Streep, which I think means it's more than just a cameo. They're giving her a sizable enough role. They're giving her things to do. And I think it's not going to be a ton of screen time. And I think we're going to see people complain about, oh, Meryl Streep gets nominated for X amount of screen time. But she's Meryl Streep, and she's playing the president in a movie that's going to be a big deal. And it's been like 3 years since her last nomination. So I think that people are ready to nominate her again. They're not quite over her. It would be weird if The Post was her final nomination. She's very much still active in Hollywood. So I think this is going to be her third nomination. Julianne Moore for Dear Evan Hansen. I've seen a couple of people talk about Amy Adams, and I know that her role is expanded for this movie, so I don't quite know. But again, if the movie's gonna be a big deal, so big, so small. I mean, that song is the definition of an Oscar scene, and this role won a Tony on Broadway, and Julianne Moore is a really well-respected actress, so it stands to reason that she's really in the conversation, although maybe Amy Adams could also be in the conversation too. I don't have her quite yet, although it would be nice to have someone who's not blonde in this category. And then Kristen Dunst, never been nominated, but very well respected for Power of the Dog, supposedly playing a really meaty role, so we'll see. I hate that I had to move out Olga Merediz because everyone really does love her performance in the Heights, but it's gonna be close. It's gonna be tricky to see if she can contend. And there, even when people were praising the movie, there were some people saying, is it enough? Does she have enough screen time to count? And also, I noticed that there's no people of color in the top 5, so Olga Merediz could be that. There's a surprising lack of people of color across these nominations, which is why I'm hoping that something comes out of nowhere and surprises us all and is a big contender. Cate Blanchett, who a lot of people are still saying her lead, and I am going to maintain that this is going to be a supporting performance. Martha Plimpton in Mass. Okay, let's talk about this. Mass, originally we thought Martha Plimpton and Jason Isaacs were both going to be lead for Mass, but it has since been revealed that all 4 of the main actors are going supporting. So I've heard that Martha Plimpton is very good in the film, but I think Ann Dowd is going to overshadow her a little bit, so it's going to be close to see if she gets in. I think the studio is mainly going to focus on Ann Dowd. Anya Taylor-Joy, very well-respected actress, could get on, but maybe. And then Alicia Vikander I put because they need someone else there, and people are excited somewhat about that movie, but we'll see where that goes. A lot of people do have either Rita Moreno for West Side Story or Ariana DeBose, and I just don't think West Side Story is going to be a big player. I'm sorry, but why remake a movie that was near perfect the first time, and with Ansel Elgort's involvement, I just don't think it's going to be as big a deal as everyone else think it's going to be. Moving on now to Best Supporting Actor. Okay, so Bradley Cooper is still in the lead, and Jason Isaacs is now in number 2. He was previously in lead actor, now he's in supporting. Jared Leto for House of Gucci, I initially had Al Pacino ranked higher than him, but people, for whatever reason, like Jared Leto, he almost got nominated for The Little Things, and now he's in contention to be nominated again for a very transformative performance in a Best Picture contender. So, whatever, I was hoping Pacino would be the one, but looking from the trailer, no, it's going to be Leto. Jesse Plemons is someone who's been working his way for a nomination like this for a while now, and he really got people's attention last year with I'm Thinking of Ending Things, so I think this is definitely going to be a contender. And then Troy Kotsur for Coda. Everyone who's seen the movie is like, oh man, he's really good, and he's got the scene. So, like, he's getting more attention than Marlee Matlin at this stage, and I think he's definitely in the hunt for nomination. And I'm okay with this 5. Idris Elba is right there, though. For a movie that I don't know is going to do anything, it might just be a fun movie that I would say that gets money, but it's going to be on Netflix, and no movie's making money this year anyway. But Idris Elba is overdue for his first nomination. So there's that, and then Oscar Isaac for Dune, in case you want to nominate an actor from it. Pacino for House of Gucci, in case you like that one. And then, yeah, Adam Driver and Colton Ryan. Do I have an Adam Driver? Do I have a Richard Jenkins? I'm sort of moving a couple of people around, but okay, never mind. I'm a little bit mixed up right now. I'm gonna try and finish this video. I've actually been recording it in chunks. I don't know if you can tell, but like I keep being interrupted because of like noise stuff. So I have Colton Ryan just because Tony nominated role, but we'll see. Let's move on to Best Actress. And one of the bigger news stories that came out recently is that the movie Blonde is not coming out this year. And what we heard was that Netflix saw the cut of the movie that Andrew Dominique had and was like, no, 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 this needs to be edited down. It can't be this risque. Which is really interesting because Netflix is usually really cool with letting directors have total ownership of their movies. But this is the one where they're like, oh, you're really pushing it. We can't show this on our platform. So just how bad was it? And even when we do get an edited down version, it may not be the type of awards movie we thought it was. So in any regard, she is removed. Lady Gaga and Jennifer Lawrence are still in number 1 and number 2. Frances McDormand in number 3 because she's Frances. I thought, okay, she makes sense as someone who'd move up. People really, really like her, and Lady Macbeth is one heck of a role. Now, I have Toni Collette for Nightmare Alley because I think, from what I understand, Collette has the lead role. And until proven otherwise, and she's overdue for a nomination anyway, so this makes sense. I mean, she is nominated for Sixth Sense, but every single person who's seen Hereditary says she should have gotten on for that one. And people, I think the Academy recognizes that they made a mistake, and they are eager to award her again. So, Toni Collette. And Amelia Jones is the newcomer contender, who's very, very good in a movie that everybody likes, and she is the anchor for that movie. So, and she sings. It's a very there's a lot going on in that performance. But speaking of singing, Jennifer Hudson for Respect. So this movie came out and people are kind of split on it because they're like, it's not that good, but Jennifer Hudson is good, but she doesn't completely disappear into the role, but she's good, but she's going to campaign, and I'm really curious. I think she's going to come very, very close to getting nominated, and it's going to be interesting because she's going to campaign, and we don't know how many actors and actresses of color are going to be in the race. Jennifer Hudson's publicist could really use that as, hey, we need to get one more person of color in the race. And I could see people voting for her even having not seen the movie. But I don't know. The movie came out, is an early release, and there's going to be a lot of other contenders that come out. I think it's very, very possible that Jennifer Hudson gets lost in the shuffle. I don't know, because I'm hearing a lot of stuff saying the movie itself is not great, and true, Andra Day managed to overcome a not-so-great movie last year, but that movie was one of the last things that came out, and this is one of the first things that come out. We're going to see a lot of other stuff. I'm not saying it's impossible that Jennifer Hudson gets in, but I think she's not a sure thing. Amanda Seyfried, I moved out because nobody else is talking about that movie at all, but it really does feel, if you look up what that movie is, that it's an awards baity contender, and she is an actress that a lot of people like. Kristen Stewart, we'll wait and see. I've heard people say that they're confident about that movie as well, but it's gonna be tricky. It's gonna be tricky. Kristen Stewart's, we thought that she stood a chance in Year in Advance predictions before, but she's never really wowed the industry, and a lot of people still remember her for being very unemotional in the Twilight movies, so we'll see. Nicole Kidman being the Ricardos, we don't know just how well that performance is going to be received. And Thomasin McKenzie for Last Night in Soho. If people really do like that movie, then she could very easily contend. But outside of that, yeah, could definitely use more people of color in this category and in other acting categories, but we'll wait and see. Maybe something big will come about. But for now, let's move on to Best Lead Actor. Okay, so looking at Best Actor now, and currently Adam Driver is still in the lead, which is interesting because we still don't know. I think that role is maybe going to border lead or supporting. It's going to be interesting. But really, I didn't know who else to put there. I mean, I'm pretty confident in Leo DiCaprio as number 2, but he already has an Oscar, and this is going to be a comedic performance, so I don't know if he can get it for this one. Denzel in third place seems like a solid bet because Denzel is a great actor, and this is a great role. It's Macbeth. And so Cumberbatch, I have Cumberbatch getting his second nomination for Power of the Dog. And then the last slot, I almost went with Anthony Ramos for In the Heights because he is getting a lot of praise for that, but we still don't know how well the movie's going to do. And I'm taking a big risk here, but I am currently predicting that Ben Platt is going to be nominated for Dear Evan Hansen, and this could turn out to really bite me in the ass. I know. If the movie comes out and it's negatively received, it's already been negatively received a lot. But here's the thing. You can complain all you want about him being too old for this role. There's a reason why he won the Tony for this. Like, he's incredible. And from what I've seen, like, of the trailers and clips so far, he's really putting his all into this performance. He lost a bunch of weight for this, and he was unsure about it. He said he was unsure about doing it, but everyone else said you got to do it, and so he's putting his all into it, and he's a great actor and a phenomenal singer, and there is a reason why he won all of the awards that he did. And if the movie is going to be successful, then I think it's going to carry him along with it. And I don't know if it's going to go beyond a nomination, but for now, I actually think that this nomination is more likely than people think it is. I at least certainly think when the movie comes out, people are going to be talking about it a lot more. Because film Twitter is not everybody. And yes, it's true that film Twitter are the ones that are saying, oh, he's too old, oh, his dad's is the producer, and so it's a narcissism. But come on. I think people are going to be really impressed with his performance when they see the film, which is why I'm confident in him getting nominated. However, Anthony Ramos is not out of the hunt, nor is Bradley Cooper, but I think Bradley Cooper might put a lot of his energy on the supporting for Saki Bottom. But we've seen dual performances get in before for lead and supporting, so it could happen again. And Will Smith for King Richard, the trailer came out, and it certainly looks like it's going to be a contender, like it's going to try to be a contender. However, it was already an issue of tone with the fact that the trailer begins with a scene that implies that he's kind of a bad father, and then the rest of the trailer is leaning towards him being a good father. And is the movie going to pick a side? Is it going to be tonally confusing? Peter Dinklage still in the hunt for Cyrano because he should have an Oscar nomination by now. And then the reviews that Nicolas Cage is getting for Pig, it sounds crazy on paper, but it could happen. Stranger things have happened. Best Director. Now, I did actually rearrange this recently after seeing Coda because, okay, so Paul Thomas Anderson and Ridley Scott are both where they were. Adam McKay and Denis Villeneuve have moved up because I think I'm more confident in their films overall. And Sienna Heater, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but for Coda, now it's not the flashiest directorial achievement out there, but the movie is very well liked, and I was having a problem because I have her, Jane Campion, and Chloe Zhao, all women directing really well liked, hopefully, directing big awards players this year, and I didn't want to leave all three of them off. And so I said, okay, even though part of my gut is saying that Guillermo del Toro should get that last slot, after the year we've had with both Emerald Fennell and Chloe Zhao getting nominated and Chloe Zhao winning, I feel like it's going to become the new norm to see at least one woman in the Best Director lineup. And honestly, as it should be, we should do that more often. And so I do think Sienna Heater is going to get the vote because her movie is really, really beloved. But don't entirely count out Jane Campion or Chloe Zhao. And it's easy to be pessimistic about this sort of thing, but I want to be optimistic. And I think Coda is a real crowd pleaser of a movie. And so I have her getting nominated for it. And the rest of the lineup seems pretty self-explanatory. Jean M. Chu has moved down because his film is not as big as it once was, and Joel Coen is added there because who knows. So that brings us to Best Picture. And, okay, so this is a really interesting lineup here. So we've got Soggy Bottom, Don't Look Up, House of Gucci, Dune, Coda, Power the Dog, Mass, Nightmare Alley, In the Heights, Dear Evan Hansen. So I have both In the Heights and Dear Evan Hansen near the bottom because we don't know what could happen with either In the Heights, if it's going to have a resurgence in the end of the year or not. I hope it does. If it doesn't, that could actually really help Dear Evan Hansen, but it could get critically slammed. I think I'm just hoping that it gets praise because I really, really want it to be good. I'm trying to manifest it. Outside of that, Eternals, Tragedy Macbeth, Last Night in Soho, Spencer, and Blue Bayou. These are the films I'm looking at to be potential contenders, but we're not quite sure yet. I'm confident at least in the top 8, but we know that we're going to get a solid 10 this year. And I will say in previous years, the past 2 times that they did 10 were 2009 and 2010, and both those years an animated movie got nominated. But even though it's a strong year for animation, I don't think Pixar's Luca is beloved enough to get that slot. And I said Mitchell's vs. Machines was going to win, but that movie being a straight-up comedy hinders its chances outside of animated feature. And I don't really know if I have much else to say. I think I've basically covered everything else. I will say Soggy Bottom is the movie I have right now as the Best Picture frontrunner, with Don't Look Up closely behind it. But it's impossible to say this early on what's going to win Best Picture. And I definitely feel like something is going to come out of nowhere and get all the big attention. So Soggy Bottom is Paul Thomas Anderson, and it makes sense. He hasn't had a Best Picture winner, but he's come close a couple times. So I have him number 1 for right now, but we will see. We will see. Okay, so those are my predictions for the nominations, and stay tuned. I'm going to have the Resident Evil from Pixels to Pictures out soon, and I'm going to try and crank more of those videos out. And stay tuned next month for another Oscar prediction update. So, yeah, things should be going pretty regularly on this channel from now on. Stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you later.